Welcome back. Today we're going to make pulled pork on the Big Green Egg. As you see right here, I got my charcoal started with the Speedy Light charcoal starters from Big Green Egg. And I also have some hickory chunks in there to be able to produce a little bit more smoke than the lump. While this is getting going, I got my indirect setup. I got that already going here. I got the half moons down here, and I got my drip pan coated there in aluminum foil to make it easier to clean up later. As you can see, I've already prepped the meat. Basically on the back side here, I cut off a lot of the fat. I still left a good amount on. However, there's a pretty good thick pad of fat there that I took off. It's not really going to affect any of the flavor, and it's probably just going to make your cook a lot longer. What I'm going to use as a binder is just regular Heinz yellow mustard that you see right there. You can get that easily at pretty much any grocery store. And I'm using Killer Hogs Barbecue, the barbecue rub. It's got a lot of good reviews. I'm going to give it a go today. So basically I'm going to coat the pork here in yellow mustard, just a thin coat. I'm just going to be able to use that so the rub will basically stay on the meat, because it is kind of like an oddly shaped meat. It's not really going to impart any flavor on it. We're just using it there as a binder to be able to hold that rub on the meat. Some people use other oils or just water, or really nothing. That's usually what I do in the past, is just put the rub directly on the meat. But today I'm going to try the binder method with yellow mustard. I'll come back and show you what that looks like when I'm done. Alrighty, so this is right after I put the yellow mustard on there, and try to put it on as thin as possible. However, you still want it to be on there to be able to hold on to that rub. So this is how it looks when you're done doing that. And next we'll come back when the rub is already all on there. And make sure you coat that generously. And the egg is approaching about 200 degrees, definitely producing some smoke there. So make sure that I'll cut that off around 225 to try to hold about 250 degrees for the length of this cook. All right, I'll come back when I put the rub on. All right, welcome back. As you can see, the smoke is still coming out the top. We dropped below 200 degrees here. As you can see, I just threw in my indirect stack here. It's basically the rig from the ceramic grill store. I got my half moons, and I got my wrapped pan there at the bottom there to catch any drippings and make easy cleanup there with the aluminum foil. I'm just going to put this in here. I'm going to let the grill come up to about 225. I'm going to close off the airflow a little bit and try to catch 250 before I put the meat on. All right, and I'll come back when we're right around 225 degrees. All right, as you can see, we're about 250 degrees. I went and I adjusted the airflow at the top and at the intake down there. It's about a little bit less than a thumb for now. Try to capture that 250 degrees. At this point, I have the meat here ready to go on. As you can see, put on a pretty healthy amount of rub, pretty generous amount. Pretty much coated it so I couldn't see very much yellow from the mustard anymore. And as you can see, it's actually holding on to the rub really well. So I'm actually gonna keep using that binder in the future. All right, you see a lot of smoke coming out of there. Good looking smoke. I'm gonna go ahead and just throw this meat on there. And go ahead and put some more rub on it if you want to cover up any spots that you might rub off by lifting it around. I'm gonna shut this and kind of let it sit at 250, and I'm probably gonna check back in a few hours to see how it's coming along. Alrighty, so the pork's been on for a little over 3 hours. Let's just take a look. All right, so obviously it's looking pretty good. That rub is actually staying on there really well. Obviously that mustard binder is helping that out. Let's take a look at the temp. 146, 151. That's the bone. 156, 150. All right, so I'm gonna give it another few hours and we'll check back. As you can see, drip pan, definitely a good idea to have that lined with aluminum foil. Otherwise you're just gonna have a mess full of grease. All right, we're coming up on about 6 hours, plenty of time to get chores done around the house, just mowed the whole yard. About 6 hours later, so let's check the temp. About 165, 170, 172, about 165. So I'm pretty happy with the crust that's forming on here. I put it on a little bit later than I wanted to today, so to kind of speed things along, to kind of get it through that stall. You don't have to wrap it, but I think that, for me, I like, just the moist meat, and if you really like a hard bark, then I'd consider not wrapping it. However, that doesn't really matter to me. I'm just gonna go ahead and wrap it and try to push it through the stall, because it's already about 2 p.m. and I always like to keep it in a cooler for about an hour or two before I serve. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this, and I'll be right back once I have that accomplished. Alrighty, so I went ahead and pulled it. I'm gonna need another piece of aluminum foil to make sure I have a real good coverage, but it's always good to make sure that, when you have it in there, it'll act kind of like a bowl for any juices that you don't want to fall at the bottom. You can use apple juice, you can use water, use really whatever liquid you want. I'm just gonna go ahead and pour a little bit of beer in there. Not very much, it's about a half a cup or so, or a quarter cup. And then I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up real tight, and then I'm gonna go ahead and throw it back on. All right, so we're back. You can see I went ahead and wrapped it in a couple layers of aluminum foil. Really, this is just meant to not allow the meat to sweat, to push through that stall point, which is that meat sweating is going to keep the meat kind of around that 165, 170 degrees. With aluminum foil in place, it's going to allow it to basically push through that and kind of cook itself within the aluminum foil. We're going to keep it in the aluminum foil until about 203 degrees at the thickest part, and that'll be perfect time to put it in the cooler, let it rest for an hour or two before we pull it and serve it. So again, back on here until about 203 degrees. Went ahead and tested it already, but it's about 160, 165 degrees. So we got about 40 degrees to go. We'll check back periodically. All right, so it's been about an hour and a half-ish since we've taken a temperature. Let's go ahead and see how we're doing here. It's bone, it's bone. All right, about 190. And sliding in pretty easily. So you're well on your way. I'd probably say maybe another hour. $130, 183. So in about an hour and a half, it went up almost 20-ish degrees. So you can see that it's going to cook a lot faster in the aluminum foil. So I'll come back in about an hour and a half, see how things are going. All right, it's been about another hour and a half. Take another temperature. All right, we're about 204. About 205. So I'm gonna say this is done. The temperature probe goes in really easily, so I know that it's gonna be nice and moist. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna go ahead and basically just use one of these small coolers here. I just put a old towel in there to use as a little bit of insulation. I'm just gonna go ahead and probably use a couple forks and lift it up into the cooler, and then I'm just gonna kind of wrap it so it basically stays warm, and I'm gonna let it rest in there for about an hour before serving. Really, it's ready to go now, but you could keep that in the cooler for about up to several hours. It'll definitely stay warm, but I'll probably let it sit in there for about an hour before I pull it for dinner. Alrighty, so I took the pork butt out of the cooler and started to unwrap it, and as you can tell, it's gonna be super moist. It's jiggling around.
definitely looks like it's really moist. What I use to shred these are these basically claws that, you know, use 2 of them, rip it apart. You can just use 2 forks, that also works. I find these claws just work a little bit better, easy to throw into the dishwasher when you're done. And that pork bone is just gonna pull right out. It's still really hot, otherwise I'd pull it out. So hopefully if you enjoyed this video, go ahead and subscribe to my site, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.